Hello, and welcome to the Garden Consortium video number 2. Today I'm going to be showing you my initial sketch pad ideas. This is a process I'm not going to say I always do it because that would be a lie, but often I will just write down a few ideas, a few goals of the piece, kind of outline the structure of it. Anyway, I've completed my sketch pad for the Garden Consortium pieces, bees and flowers, today, so I thought we would take a look at that and you could get a little bit of a look behind the beginning of my creative process. Okay, so what we've got here is, this was done on my iPad. I keep an iPad so that I can sketch out ideas and write things down, and I do apologize for my handwriting, which is probably the handwriting of a serial killer, but be that as it may, at least I can read it, and ultimately that's what's important. So we're just going to take a look through this, and I'll kind of talk about my thought process. So first, I was thinking about the piece Flowers, and I wanted to list some goals for it. As you can see, I want to use rich harmonic language, colorful orchestration, melodic moments for all groups. As a former educator, well, I guess I'm still an educator, I'm just not teaching at a school. It's really important for me to try to develop all of the instruments and all of the players in the band. Plus, I mean, that's the educational side of things, but then as a composer, I just think I would be kind of foolish not to use every single color and instrument available at some point in the piece to give my piece texture, to give it variety, and to make it more appealing to players and audiences. So melodic moments for all groups is really important to me. There will be some solos, although these will be listed as solo and soli since we are at the grade 1.5 to grade 2. And it will be cross-cued when possible to give the bands as much flexibility as possible. I've actually got kind of a creative idea on how to address that in a unique way for this piece also, which will be covered in a future video. Then rubato expressive tempo moments. I strongly believe that the biggest limiting factors for young musicians are simply rhythmic vocabulary and range. However, I think that young musicians can be very expressive if they are taught well, within certain bounds and within reasonable expectations. But if we never put these challenges in front of musicians, how do we expect them to develop them? So I think even at an early age, having these rubato and expressive tempo changes, where push and pull a little bit, I think that's good. And obviously, those will be optional for ensembles that may not be quite that developed, but I do want to put those opportunities in there. So those were like my goals for Flowers. Now for the structure, I'm planning on this being in 3/4. That's how I'm hearing it in my head. And I've just jotted down kind of an overall structure. We're going to start with some mallet things, kind of music box-ish. I'm going to use a lot of trills in this just because I think they're very pretty and they'll give it kind of that, petally, flowery texture that I'm looking for. Although I don't want to do just a bunch of sustained trills. I want it to be structured in some way where some trills bleed into others. So I don't want it to just be this constant trill on one note with, just a bunch of instruments. So we're going to find a creative way of doing that to where it's not just the regular trill stuff. The mallet percussion thing will be repeated with some wind accompaniment. Notice I've got rich brass chords when I really get that nice sound. I'm really thinking I'm going to write this piece in the key of A flat because A flat, I realize there's the 4th of the scale, which is concert D flat. Some people think that's challenging for young musicians, but I really don't. I mean, it's just one more note to teach, so, teach it. And learn it. But A flat is such a good key because it has a really dark, rich sound. Each key sounds very different, by the way. For instance, B flat to me is like the vanilla of all of them. That's not a bad thing, but it's just a very plain sounding key. A flat is very rich. D flat is the darkest sounding key, and it is beautiful. E flat is somewhat bright. F is very bright, and C is blindingly bright. So each key has its own particular character. And I try to think of that when I'm thinking about the overall sound that I want a piece to have. And also, A flat is really good for ranges for young ensemble because you can get the full octave without having to cross the break in clarinet, which I think is really important at this age grade. Not to mention the fact that I would love to keep the clarinets in the shallow register anyway, because it's just a great sound for this type of piece and this age group. So you can see through here, and you'll have a PDF of this. I've got this listed as sax solo and flute solo, but that may change. Again, I've had some ideas even this morning about how we can address that. Those would probably be my preferred instruments for those moments, but we're going to see what we can do about that. We're going to develop with echoes to mimic flowers blooming. And we're going to have some upward harmonic motion, so things are going to be moving up to a mini climax. Then the winds are going to die away. We're going to have more mallet percussion. We're going to have a horn and low brass melody, which the trumpets are going to echo. So we've been pretty woodwind heavy at the beginning and mallet percussion. Now we're going to let the brass take over for a bit. We're going to have a pan-tonal moment, meaning that we'll be playing in a couple of different keys at the same time, or at least different chord structures, because I think that's an interesting sound, and I think it's one that is not explored with young bands a whole lot. Then we're going to get to a climax, which will be lush, and we're going to have some unexpected harmony. And then it's going to die away. And just like I used some sound effects in the frog movements of the Garden Suite, we're going to use the sound of bees and wind as a sound effect. And so that's what we'll do, and ending with the solo coming back to itself. So that's kind of the overall planned structure for Flowers right now, but again, that could change. As I work on the piece, I may have other ideas, and it may develop in a whole different way. For bees, the overall characteristics or goals, I want it to be quirky and fun. Think Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals, if you're familiar with that at all. One of my favorite pieces. Saint-Saëns is one of my favorite composers also, so I definitely take a lot of influence and inspiration from him. You can see over here, I am going to write this in the key of B flat, we're going to use trills again, but this time in a different way to represent the bees flying around, and brass mouthpieces away from the instruments. But I want to use it in such a way that it doesn't sound novelty. I want it to sound still symphonic and intentional and artistic. So that'll be a challenge, because I think a lot of times people just use that to be funny. This will be humorous, but to me there's a difference between being humorous and funny. For instance, Saint-Saëns was humorous with Carnival of the Animals, but it was never ridiculous. Melodic moments for all, again, very important to me. We're going to tie the flower theme into the bee theme some way. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but it's going to happen because, there's this symbiotic relationship between bees and flowers with their life cycles, with the flowers providing food for the bees to make their honey, and then the bees spreading the pollen so that the flowers' life cycles continue. So I think it's important to connect the two movements in some way. There's going to be some chromaticism a la Flight of the Bumblebee, but it's going to be on a much easier level, something that will be achievable for the age group this is intended for. We're going to be in cut time. One of the things I thought about as I was putting this together is Frogs is primarily in 4/4, March of the Arachnids is in 6/8, Flowers will be in 3/4, and then this will be in cut time. I think a good suite explores a lot of meter and a lot of tempos and time signatures to offer an ensemble a broad experience. So that influenced my decision to make this in cut time. I know cut time is not super common for grade 1.5 to 2, but I think it'll be a good experience, and I'll write it in such a way that it will be very achievable. Also, we're going to include the Baby Bumblebee song, that I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee, and I'm really hearing it in the low brass. So low brass players, you're welcome. You're going to get to play that. Then I have the structure going on here. You can see I've just jotted down some melodic ideas here. These numbers are the numbers of the scale. So for instance, like 5, 3, 5, 3, then flat 3, 1, flat 3, 1, and so forth. And then melody here. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5, 5, and then sharp 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, or like that. So I'm hearing that in my head, and I jotted those ideas down, and again, those could change. And we're going to have some mute or buzzed brass moments coming down, and probably some glissandi in the trombones. So then we'll go through the melody again. I'm just kind of fishing out this whole structure of the intro melody, which will be mainly woodwind heavy. Then we're going to have a slower moment where the bees finally land on the flowers, and we're going to bring back the flower theme. And we're going to have a melody played on brass mouthpieces. I've already given this some thought, and we're going to have 1 or 2 clarinets play along with them on their instruments softly to give them a harmonic base for their ears. And that will be marked optional, so that if the brass players develop enough ear and embouchure control to do it by themselves, that will be fine. But if not, they'll have some help. Then we'll have the low voices on Baby Bumblebee, and we're going to layer the melody 1 over it, and we can alter it if necessary to make it harmonically fit. The main melody will come back in brass, but faster and more exciting, and then we'll have a big finale. And, since this piece can stand alone by itself or can be played as the full garden suite, I'm actually going to write 2 endings. So it'll be kind of the equivalent of having a first and second ending, except you wouldn't do both. The first ending will be if you're playing the piece by itself, but there will be an optional second ending that you can take instead that will bring back a lot of themes from the rest of the suite and kind of wrap everything up as a big finale. So that's pretty much my ideas on my sketchpad. And again, these may change, but we'll see. So, as you can see, we've got some plans in place, so my next job is to begin sketching and kind of putting the piece together and experimenting with it and see if that structure works. Again, as I said in the video while we were looking at the sketches and the ideas, it could change, and that's one of the things that I really allow myself to do when I'm writing a piece, is I listen to it and I see where it needs to go. I never just say, oh, well, this was my plan and I have to stick there, because that would probably not be a good thing, and I think there's a lot of people and a lot of creatives that do that. It's too easy to fall in love with one idea and not leave yourself open to possibilities. So I try to do that for myself, and usually, at least to me, the pieces end up being better. So we've got our plan in place. Next video should be the sketches, and let's see what this piece turns into. So as always, peace, love, and music.